Ball thinking about it from behind the three-point line against Derek Fisher. Drives to his left, back to his right, turns, shoots the three. Bingo.
Wow.
He's 6 for 6 from deep.
Wow.
He can't wait to find a spot to shoot that one. 60-39, Clippers' biggest lead, and that's 7 unanswered points out of the Doc Rivers timeout.
Stunning events yesterday with the Clippers blasting Oklahoma City despite the short turnaround. Wizards, no surprise, over Indiana. We'll film study both the Clippers' unstoppable Blake to DeAndre combo as well as the Pacers' complete defragmentation. We'll look at coaching and more. It is tip-off. Hello, how are you? Jazz Radio Voice and NBA Insider. I'm David Locke. Thanks for taking the time with us. The questions are up and open for you if you want to submit a question. If you're watching on the David Locke YouTube channel or watching live at the Google Plus page, that would be great. In addition, you can catch this on any of your podcast catchers whenever it might be convenient to you, and I hope you are tuning in. We'll follow the format we've been following throughout the playoffs, which is a quick little run-through of those things that we think are important from the night before, and then we'll talk coaching a little bit for the Jazz, and then we'll move to film study. For those of you on audio, we try to leave that film study for last in case it's too tough on the podcast version. Last night was just a reconfirmation of everything wrong with Indiana. I don't think they're getting out of this. They've now looked terrible against Atlanta, who's a spread floor, and you could say, well, the matchup was bad. Then last night, Washington is a matchup that they should be able to handle a little bit better. With their defense, they handle it not at all. What's stunning to me when you watch Indiana right now is how much the offensive possession seems to be dictating the defensive energy. So one of the more telling possessions, Lance Stevenson drives the floor, misses a layup, and not one teammate runs back. Ball bounces twice on the ground before anybody else goes that might help him out on that. They kind of just know, well, he's not going to pass, so he's going. Lance Stevenson goes one-on-one, and it looked to me as though on the next possession, this might be too simplistic, Paul George is pissed and takes it off. The Paul George, Lance Stevenson dynamic doesn't seem to be vibing. Everyone else talked about Evan Turner. I don't know the inside scoop, but something has disastrously happened inside that locker room. I'll show you the opening 5 minutes of that game. Possession by possession, just the 6 opening possessions. It's as selfish a set of basketball as you can see, and then the defensive energy is really lacking. They just don't look like they want to be out there. It's going to be very interesting to me on Wednesday. They could lose on Wednesday, and then they get swept. Because they don't – there's only so many times you can go back to the well and say, all right, we're going to fight through this and get through it. And Indiana doesn't have a lot more, particularly a team that just does not seem to be getting along or is engaged at all. And who knows what's up with Roy Hibbert. No points, no rebounds last night. But it's not only Roy Hibbert. I mean, Washington did some things interesting where they brought Hibbert to them and then were able to take advantage of that. They brought him out 8 feet because he doesn't get back very well. The Clippers-Oklahoma City game was just a stunner to me. I never suspected that. In fact, I had the opposite. I was paralleling it to when the Jazz in '96 had to go to Seattle on short rest, got blasted. I said in an interview on KJR in Seattle, and I think with Scotty yesterday, that I think the Clippers are the better team. That statistically, you look at, I think they're better. I think they have more depth. I think they have more variety in the lineups they can go to. Oklahoma City concerns me because after Ibaka, Durant, Westbrook, they're really getting nothing out of anyone else. And so, therefore, when you look at those things, and they didn't last night, they have to have a Reggie Jackson-type night for them to win a series. And I'm not sure how much they can rely on getting one of those. Caron Butler was terrible last night. Reggie Jackson, they were all terrible. The numbers, I tweeted this out, the numbers on the Clippers starting 5 last night are just stunning. Let me see if I can find this. The Clippers starting 5 last night played 22 minutes and scored 70 points. They shot 66%. Their effective field goal percent was 77%. And the Clippers starters outscored in the 22 minutes down the floor the Thunder 70-49. Pretty amazing. Also, by the way, in that Washington game, The Pacers starting 5, which, as I said, looks like they don't want to be together, 3 for 18 shooting, no threes in 12 minutes. They outscored 21-13. And Washington, while they had their starting 5 on the floor, in 20 minutes held the Pacers to 20 points, to 25 points. I don't know how much film study we'll do on the Pacers. I have a bunch of stuff. We'll try to see if we can get some before. The other one on the Pacers, which is the amount of mid-range jumpers they're taking, seemed to be exorbitant in that game. That was a note I had while watching the game, and I have not gone back to check it. I could probably do it while we're talking here. It just was stunning to me, at least the way it looked to me, about just how many really just 15, and maybe that's their game. I mean, that's maybe why their offense isn't very good either. They're a bad offensive team, and that's a real problem for them. And last night it showed. I don't know what they do. You have to win in the playoffs, you have to be insanely balanced. You can't be 1 offensively and 22 defensively. You can't just as much. You can't be 1 defensively and 22 offensively, or else it's not going to come together. Last night the Pacers took 44 of their 81 shots from the mid-range. 44 of 81. They only got 20 shots in the restricted area the whole night, and they went 8 of 20 on those shots. Woo! All right, let's go to the coaching search. One question I'm getting from people is, well, what's taking so long? What's up with it? I think I talked about this with Scotty G yesterday, but I'll bring it up here today. I apologize if I did it on the tip-off as well. I can't see any incentive of the Jazz speeding this search up. Let's say the Jazz are looking to get one of the bigger names, Lionel Hollins, George Karl, Stan Van Gundy. Those guys are not jumping on the Utah job until they have an understanding of what's going on with some of the other jobs. I'm not sure that's what we're looking at either. I'm not sure any of those guys match what we're trying to do right now as a franchise. But nonetheless, let's just say those are the guys that we want. Isolate Stan Van Gundy for a second. He's probably a big market guy. He probably wants to see is Steve Kerr going to go take the Warriors instead of taking the Knicks. By the way, if I'm Steve Kerr watching the Western Conference playoffs, I want out of the Western Conference. Holy smokes, these teams are good. Then you look at it, if you might want to see what happens with the Lakers, and you probably have a hard time grabbing him here. Unless suddenly everybody else makes their decisions, Van Gundy's not a part of it, and so Van Gundy's suddenly, well, if I want to get in, I probably have this to do. So there's no strength there. Then on the next level, the next tier of coach you're going to is you're looking for the diamond in the rough. You're looking for something special out of one of these guys. You're probably interviewing that D-League group we've talked about numerous times. You might be, I don't know how far you go. Do you go to like Shaka Smart at VCU and try to buck the trend of what works? What are you trying to do, and who are you talking to, and who do you find out might suddenly be interested you didn't know about? And then work this interview process and look and see what leads the organization into the best spot next, I think, is the question for you. I've continued my research on coaches, and it's not great research right now. It's just those coaches who've been successful. It's not those successful versus who've been failures or what rate or anything like that, which I probably need to do more of, but I don't have all the time. It's interesting. Of the coaches I've looked at so far, I'm not done, but player to assistant to head coach, that seems to be a fairly decent route. Player directly to head coach actually seems to be a all right route. Minor league head coach to assistant to head coach is a pretty good route. That one is fitting. That's worked. That's worked as much as any other thing I have found. College head coach to assistant NBA coach to a head coach seems to work. There's a common thread here, and the common thread is previous head coaching experience. Previous head coaching, the player to assistant to head does not have that. But on kind of all the other realms, minor assistant head coach, there's 6 of those I found that are really good. College assistant head, there's 4 of those I found. And so in turn, you end up with previous head coaching experience on some level seems to be very important. And good previously at the NBA level is important. And that gets us to today's coach. You've probably heard of him. He's coached against the Jazz. He's played against the Jazz an awful lot. Nate McMillan. Nate McMillan is the associate head coach right now of the Indiana Pacers. Not sure whether that's a good thing on his resume or a bad thing on his resume. Nate played in the NBA for 11 years before injuries curtailed him, and then became the head coach after being an assistant under both George Karl and Paul Westphal. Became the head coach of the the Seattle Supersonics. Had limited success early, but then after kind of changing some of the ways he played and doing things the way he wanted to do them, in his fifth year, had success at 52-30, winning the division with an undermanned team. He then went to Portland and went through an entire rebuild with Portland. They won 21, then 32, then 41, then 54, then 50. Then they got impatient, and then he got torpedoed by Raymond Felton and some others. And excuse me, and was let go as the head coach when they were 20 and 23. But you look at him as a head coach, his first few years, 45, 38 midway through his season, very good year. Then 45 wins, 40 wins. They have a bad year at 37. He pops it into a 52, and then they go 21-32, 41-54 in Portland. It's one of the more impressive rides up. You start looking at Nate, what's interesting about him is he's really thought of as a defensive coach, but he's probably an offensive coach. His pace of play in his final year in Seattle was 27th in the NBA. They were the number 2 offensive team and number 27th defensive team. The year prior to that, their pace was a little faster, but again, they were 27th defensively and 3rd offensively. We also had Ray Allen and Rashard Lewis, so maybe that's the reality of who you are. And prior to that, they were 17th defensively. If you go look at his Portland teams, and again, we're going to start with his Portland teams that were just terrible early on. The 21-61 Portland team, 28th defensively, 28th in the league in pace of play. They were the last offensive team. The next year, they go to 20th offensively and 26th defensively. Again, though, 29th in pace of play. So some of the thoughts of him as a defensive coach have him largely based on the fact that he pace of play. Now, as they improve, they stayed 29th in pace of play, but their offense in the 41 and 41 year went 14th in the league and 17th defensively. Then as they make the jump to a 54 team, they were the number 1 offensive team in the NBA. And that's the team that had LaMarcus and Brandon Roy, but Travis Outlaw, Steve Blake, and Rudy Fernandez were next. I mean, pretty impressive to be the number 1 offensive team in the league. 13th defensively. But again, pace of play, 30th. They then, in his next year, when they went 50 and 32, they were the 7th best offensive team, 15th best defensive team by rating, 30th in pace of play. So his success rate is actually quite good. And then finally the 48 and 34 league, again, 30th in pace of play, 10th offensively and 14th defensively. You've got to be willing to play a slow game if you choose Nate McMillan as your head coach. He's got a pretty impressive resume. His time here in Indiana, again, that's not a very high pace of play team, may help him a little bit defensively, but that is a offensive. This is seems very contradictory, but Nate McMillan is a offensive, slow-paced head coach. Offensive, slow-paced head coach. And so to the point of this coaching search of what direction you go and how you do this, that is a good example to me of where I just don't think there's a rush. I mean, maybe Nate turns out to be your guy a little bit, and if that's the case, then maybe you look at it a bit differently. But there doesn't seem to me to be a huge rush on this. Unless there's a singular guy that the Jazz really want to have and get, it seems to me much more that you're better off taking this and stretching it out, lengthening the process, seeing who might slip through the cracks to add to your list, and then if you're not getting someone like Nate or previous experience, and you're into that D-League group, take your time, see who it is, who knows who emerges? For all you know, the best case scenario is right under your nose. All right, let's go to film study. We're going to start with actually, let's start with the good. Let me switch. Let me start with the Clippers. Two plays of the Clippers that just show how incredibly difficult they are to guard right now. The first is early in the game, alley-oop dunk to DeAndre Jordan, and it's one of those. This is where the Clippers are great. There's two things that are should jump out to you here. One is that their possession doesn't work entirely to start, and they're able to work their way all the way through it to get where they want to. And then the second thing that should jump out to you is you watch how this is the sign of a great basketball team. Possessions that happen at one point of the game are then impacting later possessions in the game as well. That's a little loud. We will mute our friends Michael Smith and Ralph Lawler. Or actually, that's probably Steve Kerr. So, all right, here's the possession and this is going to end up with a DeAndre Jordan dunk. But if you watch, they bring it up. They take their initial quick drag screen. Matt Barnes has nothing there. Flip it over to Chris Paul. There's 17 on the clock. He works to the right on pick and roll with Jordan. It's double team. Doesn't work. Resets to Barnes at the top. There's now 10 on the shot clock. Bounce pass to Blake, and he dunks to Jordan. There's a play that didn't work to start, and then they run. So let's go back, and this is where they're so good, and this is where I actually think the future of NBA offense is going. And we'll take it through. So here's the first pick and roll that comes with Jordan and Chris Paul, and they ice it down to the wing like everybody else does. And so now Oklahoma City defends this pretty well. They've got Chris Paul trapped in the corner, Durant and Ibaka here, Cephalosis hanging back, and Chris Paul makes the pass out to Barnes up top here, and he quickly gets into a pick and roll with Blake. Well, this is tough because Durant's going to have to come back to Barnes. Ibaka's got to come back to Blake, and everyone's really in a scramble. The dual pick and roll on a single play, I think, is the future. Here it is, and here's the scramble back. Now, they got back quite nicely. As you see, Barnes is now going to bring it off this basic pick and roll. Nice pick by Blake. Durant does not do a great job through it. Ibaka covers it perfectly as he steps out, but it's also now gotten very low. And you have Chris Paul in the far corner, Perkins and Jordan on the right block. Bounce pass comes to Blake, frees it. Perkins steps up exactly like he's supposed to because Blake just got it on the third man over. Ibaka cut off Barnes, and here's Blake Griffin. He has if you're watching this, he has every choice in the world. He can flip it up high to DeAndre Jordan for the slam dunk. He's got Chris Paul wide open in the corner. This is where passing big men make all the difference in the world. And here it is, slam dunk, DeAndre Jordan, bang. And they roll. And that's their early statement. So now they are just beating up on the Thunder, stunningly at this point. And we go to the second quarter, and a similar play comes out of this play. Guys are in different spots. The Thunder at this point are begging for lineup combinations that might work or might not. And you're going to see two of the same things here. One is this time they don't rush it up quite as much, but they get into an early action with 19 on the clock. J.J. Redick swings out, down screen to Barnes, who circles around. J.J. on the curl, and the play doesn't work. It doesn't work. Their initial action, nothing happens. 13 on the shot clock, and they're going to flip it out to Chris Paul and reset. Now there's 11 on the clock. How awesome is that? An initial action, and then they comfortably get into the early set. This is where they're great. So now the Thunder are actually pretty well set. The Thunder have done a nice job defensively. Pick and roll with Blake, and actually I'll play it through, and then we'll deal with it. And Blake this time just slides right to the basket for an easy layup. Well, how come? We go back to it. Play doesn't materialize. They reset Chris Paul, and here's the pick and roll. Ibaka steps out like they're planning to. They don't keep it very tight, though. This is a weakness, and that could be, if we watch it closely, it could be a strength of Chris Paul if we watch that again. Chris Paul gets the pick, and he goes side. He just makes a nice pass. Really, frankly, a very, very nice pass. But that's a little bit – Ibaka's kind of caught in no man's land. Ibaka's either got to be back much further, or he's trying to stay attached to Blake a little bit here. And there's not a huge window for those of you watching it on the video for this pass to come through. Westbrook's a little late getting over, but this little window is all he needs. And he bounces it to Blake, and then we pause it. Again, J.J. Redick is now wide open in the right corner for three. Reggie Jackson stuck. Durant is down here on DeAndre Jordan, and Durant is thinking to himself, well, if I take one step forward, it's a lob to Jordan for the dunk. So instead, Blake just slides right by for an easy layup. And easily done, and the Clippers are rolling. I mean, really, that's high-level execution, beautiful basketball, frankly, as good as you can get. Now, let's watch the opposite. And that's also one of the things that's hard, it's sometimes, I think, hard to watch in these games, is what's the beauty to me of that is the patience inside of that set. The fact that they made their initial probe, it didn't come together, and then they worked it. Now, we're going to walk through here. I unfortunately can't just go one after another. I'm going to have to do these little pauses where I pop out. We're going to run through the opening possessions of
knocked down by Ariza.
Opening possessions of the Pacers game. These are their opening 5 or 6 possessions offensively. This is dreadful basketball. Chris Webber's great, by the way, as an analyst. So here comes George Hill up to the near side. They run a little bit of an action. And the other thing you can watch is the lethargicness in which they run their action. And there's no second and third options. So here we go on this play. George Hill to the left side. David West sets a kind of minor screen for Paul George on the left side to try to get something going. And but no contact is made. They go under the guard. So then they run right into a pick and roll. Nene, Hill makes no intention of making play. And look how clogged the floor is here for Indiana. Even if George Hill wants to penetrate, nothing's there. They've set a stagger for Paul George to come around the outside. There's no room. So George Hill retreats, bounces to David West. He's going to go one-on-one, and Nene blocks the shot. By the way, the common thread you're going to see here is that Nene dominates this game. So there's the first possession. They make one pass on the entire possession. Nothing else materializes. There's no floor spacing. David West got his turn on the first possession. So now we go to the Pacers' next possession. And again, they walk it up the floor. They got to wait for Hibbert to get down. George Hill works to the right side. Quick bounce pass to Lance Stevenson. He gets the early touch. Bad pass to Hibbert, blown up by Nene. The whole offense is now off Hibbert. And we have a foul off the ball on Trevor Ariza. We're going to roll through just because that's how we have it. But again, you see Nene, who I love, blows up that play too. So now we've had 2 offensive plays, and Nene has destroyed both of them. They make one inbound pass to West. He hands to Hill, swings to Stevenson, sort of a pick by Hibbert, bounce to Hibbert, and oh, please, take that 16-footer. No good. That actually was a little bit of ball movement. But now you're going to start watching what happens. So West has got a possession. Hibbert has a possession that they've used, and this begins to be abundantly clear on how fragmented this team is. Pulling it up right now. You did not lose anything. And here they come. Open possession, little open floor. Guys aren't running the floor at all. Paul George has it. Comes off a sort of pick by West and rises into his turn jumper. No good. So no passes on that possession. That's beautiful, isn't it? This is how they're opening the game. Those are their first 3 possessions of the game. So now we go to our next one, which is maybe to me the one that showed the most, and I could be overplaying this a little bit. So here it is. They're going to get into a set where Paul George has to make an entry pass to Roy Hibbert, and his effort to do it is 0. Cross screen coming here, trying to get Stevenson the ball. He's wide open. They don't go to him. Instead, it's up to Paul George for the one pass, and they run a pick and roll, which Nene and Gortat cover beautifully. Paul George, now Hibbert, I don't know what he's doing, frankly, because Hibbert stands right out over here at 20 feet. He has no value to this play. I'm sure Paul George is frustrated because his man just cut him off. West is out here sort of at the three-point line, not doing anything. Stevenson is loping in the left corner with Ariza face guarding him, and Paul George is completely cut off by very, very good Washington defense. This is exactly what you need to do. Now, Hibbert with a late drop down, and Paul George just throws a lazy pass out of bounds, turnover, and look at Stevenson just walking back. The body language after these possessions where they don't get touches is so terrible. We continue now with their next mistake, they actually will sneak a. What's so funny about this game of basketball is, and this is not the one. Coming up in a moment, they'll sneak a good possession in, and you're like, oh well, they figured it out, and it's not. Here comes Paul George up into the floor, gets an early pick, hesitates. Oh wait a second, I'm going all the way to the basket, and Nene blocks the shot. Beautifully done by Nene here, but again, now suddenly you have Lance Stevenson has not touched the ball for other than a second in this game. Everyone's had their turn. George Hill's yet to take a shot. And so what happens? Inbound to Stevenson. Wait a sec, it's my turn. There's no reason for this. And he tries to go one-on-one, turns it over, and frankly, the Pacers are done at this point. It's 8-0. We're 3 minutes in. Everyone's playing my turn basketball, and they are broken already. I don't even think I need to show you anything else. The irony is that they then turn this into their next possession's a very good one. But that's it. I mean, Nene was brilliant. The Pacers play like they hate each other. It's incredible. The only other one that's incredible, and I have to question, if Nate McMillan, who we talked about earlier, is on this bench, maybe you can't do a lot with this. This is in the fourth quarter. The game is, I don't think the game is entire. There's 2:24 left. Pacers are down 9. So, I mean, this it's pretty much over. But this is a big offensive possession, and this is the Pacers' answer to this? Hey, wait a sec. Where did my little window go to hit play? Hello? We're going to have to go small screen here.
The game needs to be, the ball needs to be in his hand as the quickest player on.
Let's see if you get full screen. I don't know what you guys have. I'm on full screen here. Paul George goes left side. I should check, and if I go full screen, there's no way for me to know. All right, so I'm going to hope you got that, or you're still on your small screen, and I'll check the chat room if you didn't get it. So here, I'm just going to let you watch this. This is a 9-point game. This is the Pacers' their answer. George Hill up top, high pick with West. Nobody really tries to get open. West is there. He goes one-on-one. Hibbert's blocking the entire middle of the floor. Kicks it out. Hibbert takes a 16-footer. That's it. But if you watch throughout the possession, they're just busted. So Paul George comes to get the ball. Hibbert's going to set a cross screen for Stevenson. Stevenson comes right into where, if Paul George is going to drive or do something, Stevenson's right there. Hibbert is still on the right block, meaning Nene can get over and bother it. David West is calling for a pick. George Hill is late coming for it. Now, I don't know what Lance Stevenson is doing, but he's just standing in this area. Paul George has no chance he can do anything, so he has to retreat out to create space. George Hill comes to get it. Now with 9 on the shot clock, we're going to run a backside pick and roll, which is pretty far off of where you want to go. Great defensive effort here by John Wall to get above the pick, I will say. Gortat closes over. And nobody else, Paul George is open. George Hill is not a great point guard. He probably could have made this pass over, and you have something happening on this play. That's the miss. West gets it instead. I am somehow in. Gortat gets back to him. Roy Hibbert posts up in the middle of the lane. What's West going to do here with this floor spacing? I don't have any idea what Lance Stevenson's doing, but he's standing next to Roy Hibbert holding his hand. So he penetrates. Nice move. Nene comes over, and Roy Hibbert is open for a 16-foot jumper. There's nothing good about that at all. So anyway, that is the broken Indiana Pacers. We have a bunch. Anybody, you guys get that one? Anybody in the chat room want to let me know? So that is the broken Indiana Pacers. That is the Clippers, and that is today's edition of Tip Off. Hope you enjoyed. Have a great day.